So today I'm joined by BBC Radio Bristol presenter James Hanson. So James, thank you very much for talking to me today. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Ben. Thank you for having me on. Very exciting.
No problem. Pleasure to have you on today. So we'll kick it off by talking about obviously your career and how did you first get into radio? Obviously working for the BBC and obviously the overall media world.
Well, I was very lucky, really, because I had always wanted to work in radio, really. When I was much younger, when I was a kid growing up, in the summer holidays, I used to sit in my bedroom, basically, pretending to be on the radio. And I would play songs off my computer. And you know, the caps lock key, when if you hit it, the little green light comes on. I used to pretend that was my microphone. I wasn't recording anything. I was just talking to myself like a weirdo in the corner of my bedroom, pretending to be on the radio. And then I did community radio at a little community radio station in Southmead at the Greenway Centre for a couple of years. And I did student radio when I went off to university in Leeds. And then I just managed to kind of luck my way into the BBC, really, because I managed to blag a couple of weeks shadowing at BBC Radio Somerset down the road in Taunton. And they just had me in making cups of tea, basically, seeing what was happening. And then I managed to get some shifts off the back of that, reading the travel and meeting and greeting people, answering the phones. And one thing led to another. And they slowly gave me more and more things to do, allowed me on air. And the rest is history. Then I moved to Radio Bristol a couple of years later. And since January, I've been presenting the breakfast show.
So how's it been working at BBC Radio Bristol for the last few years? And then how's it obviously been doing the breakfast show recently?
Yeah, I mean, I must say, I've loved it. You know, I'm a local lad, grew up in Nailsea, born in Bristol. So this is my neck of the woods. And if you're going to do local radio, you've got to do it with somewhere that you love. And you know, when I interview people, there's a fair chance I will know them personally or know someone they know, which is a real joy. And the other great thing about Radio Bristol is that we talk about so many different things. You know, there's so much going on in our area, but you also get to meet and talk to some really interesting people. So that's been an absolute joy. And the breakfast show is, more than any other show, such an interesting show to do, because you are just speaking to, you know, we'll often have 20, 30 different guests on a day sometimes on certain things. So you're just speaking to so many people. You're talking about different things. You know, tomorrow, for instance, we'll be talking about the Euros, but we'll also be talking about the number of people getting pinged by the NHS Test and Trace app currently and having to self-isolate. I know probably loads of people at school, you know, in your school are probably having to self-isolate because someone in their year group or their classes, you know, it's a massive problem. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the fact that no one wants to become a lorry driver anymore. But if you do, you can make really good money being a lorry driver. And there's a national shortage of lorry drivers. We'll talk about the fact there's the first ever visually impaired 10K happening in Bristol this September. So there's just so many different things that you might talk about. So it's never dull. And that's the joy of it, really.
Yeah, so what does your job actually consist of at BBC Radio Bristol? Because I expect, obviously, a lot of it is sitting down in front of a mic, but I expect you also do a bit of other stuff as well.
Yeah, so I suppose, you know, the bit everyone knows is the bit of you being on air, really. So the downside of the job is the alarm every morning. My first alarm, Ben, goes off at 10 to 4, and then I normally snooze until 4. Sometimes I will snooze a bit later, depending on if England have been playing the night before, and I might have been to the pub, but that doesn't happen very often. And that means I get into work at about 4:30, which is early, and I need a couple of cups of coffee to get me going. And then I'm on air. The show is 4 hours long, which is quite long for a radio show, which is 6 until 10. And then after that, we'll have a meeting and we'll chat about how the show went, what we're going to do in the show the next day. And then I might book things for the show the next day. If I was interviewing you, for example, I might phone you up and go, Ben, do you want to come on the radio tomorrow morning? And I'll set stuff up. Or I might go out recording and interview people. So, for example, tomorrow after the show, I'm going to Knoll West and I'm going to chat to some of the locals there who are campaigning for there to be a supermarket in Knoll West, because it doesn't really have a massive supermarket currently. So I'll go to Knoll West, chat to them, record for Monday's show. The nice thing is I'm normally free in the afternoons, in the evening, because I'm kind of get home kind of early afternoon, lunchtime-ish, which is nice. But there is always, you know, with radio, there's a lot of prep that goes on behind the scenes, because you need the guest to speak to. You need to know what you're talking about. If I'm talking about a subject, I don't need to be an expert in it, but I need to know enough about it to be able to ask reasonably intelligent questions, hopefully. So there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, but I also have a really good team of, journalists, reporters, producers who help out as well.
Yeah, so you said earlier that you've been working at BBC Radio Bristol for a good few years now. What's been some of your memorable moments at the BBC, and some of your favourite moments as well?
Oh, so many, really. I think sometimes it's the kind of, a lot of people ask you stuff like, who's the best person you've interviewed? And on one level, you might say, really famous people. Like I got to interview John Cleese last year. He's obviously completely legend. That was great. Got to interview Graham Norton and people like that. That's nice, but that's not really the big highlights. The most interesting people you meet are people who just have fascinating stories. There was a bloke in Bath whose job was, he's a volunteer at a charity shop, and every time a jigsaw gets handed in, he will take the jigsaw and do it by himself to check that there are no missing pieces before they go and sell them in the charity shop. And he's just obsessed with jigsaws. And it was just one of the most interesting interviews I've ever done, because it's just, I don't know, something about him just made me smile. And sometimes you just get the opportunity to do stuff and chat to people who are just really interesting. I spoke to a bloke last week who had the world's longest case of coronavirus. So he tested positive for COVID for almost 300 days straight. He lives in Downend, so he's local to us. And this is the longest recorded case of COVID ever in the world, which is remarkable. And to be honest, they thought he would probably die as a result of it, and his family certainly did. But he's recovered, he's on the mend. And I spoke to him and his wife last week. And you have those conversations with people and you just think, this is, a fascinating person to talk to. So there are loads of things like that. Obviously, big things happen. I mean, I remember, thinking about football, I got to go to the Man City game at the semi-final of the League Cup a few years back. And I was covering the game beforehand because they had me outside Ashton Gate chatting to some of the fans, getting the atmosphere. And then Richard, who's our sports editor at Radio Bristol, said to me, we've got a spare ticket up in we've got a spare seat up in the press box. Do you want to come up and sit in the press box? So I had Richard, who was commentating on the game, to my right. I had Jeff Twentyman, who was our main sports presenter, on our left, and Gary Hours doing the co-commentary just to the right. And I was just sitting there almost as a fan watching the game, but also observing Richard doing his commentary. And he's an absolute master at it. And watching Gary do his co-commentary, watching Jeff at halftime and before the game doing his presenting. And I just felt so lucky. I mean, I had prime seats there. So obviously those kind of things are big moments, but then also, you get to present on really significant days. I mean, and sometimes they're not necessarily happy days, but they're significant days. I mean, very sadly, we had the explosions in Avonmouth just before Christmas, and I had to go reporting on that. When the Colston statue came down, I was on air the next day. When we had those protests, the riots over the Kill the Bill protests in March, I was on air the next day, had to react to that. So, there are big moments as well that you have to cover, and those are memorable as well in their way.
We'll definitely go on to talk a little bit about football in just a moment, but you've mentioned a few times, obviously, about COVID. How has that changed your job personally as a presenter on radio?
Quite a lot in a way. I mean, what I haven't done, although some of my colleagues have, is presented shows from home. And I mean, I'm here now in my flat and I've got my microphone here. And I've got a work laptop that I can get onto the systems at work on. But I wouldn't really want to work from home because I live on my own. And if I was working from home and living, I'd get a bit lonely, particularly during the heart of the pandemic when we couldn't really socialise with people. And also because there's something about being in the studio that's quite nice. But it has meant that for most of the last year, we haven't really been able to go out and record with people. I mentioned I'm going out tomorrow to meet people in Knoll West and record with them. There haven't been many times over the last year we've been allowed to do that, and that's annoying. Also, we haven't had since March last year any guests really in the studio. So if we interview someone, it's on the phone or it's on Zoom, but it's not in the studio, which, phone and Zoom works, but it's quite nice having that face-to-face conversation with someone sometimes. So from that perspective, it has impacted you quite a lot. And also, I think, just from a kind of, when you're on air, you've got to be very mindful of the fact that people are experiencing the pandemic very differently. Some people are in a really bad place. They need cheering up. and so I think people have maybe turned to radio a bit more over the last year, particularly when we were in the lockdowns and you couldn't do much. Having a bit of company at home through the radio, I think meant a lot to people.
Yeah, definitely. And it, as you said, it was obviously one of the only things you really could do, wasn't it? During
Yeah.
lockdown, it was pretty much work, watch TV, maybe get out in the garden if you've got one. But apart from that, that was pretty much it. But let's go on to talk a little bit about football. Obviously, off air, you said you were a Liverpool fan. So what have been some of your best memories supporting Liverpool down the years?
Oh, well, I mean, the best has to be Istanbul, has to be the Champions League final in 2005. I would have been 12 at the time, wouldn't have quite turned 13. And one of the greatest nights of my life. I mean, just unbelievable. I remember we were obviously 3-0 down at half time. And I remember my mum almost trying to kind of have a conversation with me along the lines of, look, James, it's, sometimes you don't win in life and it's fine. They've come so far. They're almost trying to kind of like control my emotions. And I remember, she always tells this story. I turned around home and said, it's not over yet. Never give up. You never know. We could do it. And then, of course, we did. And I mean, obviously, we're recording this just after the England-Germany game and not the same in terms of the way the match panned out was different, but the emotions that I'm sure you and I both felt after the game on Tuesday, very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, just absolute unbridled joy, and just fantastic. So that's the highlight, really. But I mean, I shouldn't really be a Liverpool fan. I mean, this is my guilty, not even secret. I mean, I'm not from Liverpool, got no connection with Liverpool. You can call me a glory hunter if you want. I mean, I should be, like you, Ben, I should be a City fan, really, because my uncle, Derek, used to take me along. He had 3 daughters. None of them had any interest in football. He was a season ticket holder at Ashton Gate. My older brother had no interest in football. So he was thinking to himself, okay, I'll take James to the football. He's my last hope. And he took me along a few times. And I remember watching City played Wickham on one occasion, I remember. And I remember the game vividly only because the person who Derek had his season ticket next to used to feed me the Fox's Glacier mints during the game. And that is more memorable to me than what happened on the pitch. I remember I liked Mickey Bell and Scott Murray, but other than that, I can't remember much about it. It just didn't grab me. I don't know why. And then one day I watched England on the TV play Scotland, and Michael Owen was playing. And I became a Michael Owen fan, and through that I became a Liverpool fan, and then the rest is history. And I think I probably broke my uncle's heart by not being a City fan, but such is life. But I've got a soft spot still for City, and in a way, it probably helps with my job now to not be one or the other in terms of City or Rovers, because obviously BBC Radio Bristol, we do not take sides. We want both our teams to do well. It's good for us if City are doing well, and it's good for us if Rovers are doing well. And, if they were both in the Premier League, then that would be brilliant. But, I think it might be more likely for City. I think we can probably say that. But, So I'm, in many respects, I should be a City fan, but I am a Liverpool fan, yeah.
Do you think if you did support either City or Rovers, it might make your job just that little bit more tricky?
I think I would just have to not hide it, but just be careful with it. But I mean, in a way, it's no different to, I have to interview a lot of politicians and talk about kind of stuff that is vaguely political. It might be the mayor of Bristol. It could be an MP. Now, obviously, I vote, but I don't tell people who I vote for. I have views, but I don't tell people what my views are. So, I just have to kind of tread that line and make sure I'm not giving away how I really feel about stuff. And with football, I think it wouldn't be the end of the world if people knew if I was a City fan that I was a City fan. I mean, I tell people on air I'm a Liverpool fan. That's fine. But, I wouldn't start goading Rovers or whatever it may be, or vice versa, because, you've got to be a platform for everyone across the City and Rovers fans and fans of all clubs and all teams and all sports.
And I expect one of the major talking points at Radio Bristol at the moment is obviously England at the Euros. What have you thoughts of England's games so far in the Euros, and how far do you think we'll make it?
Well, I've loved it. I mean, I'm enjoying the Euros so much, and we've been brilliant. And okay, we maybe haven't played as excitingly as some people would have hoped, but Gareth Southgate is very shrewd. We're playing the way a team that wins major tournaments play. People need to remember that Greece won the Euros playing, a certain way. Portugal last time round won the Euros playing a certain way. And I think that we will improve as the tournament goes on. We will play with a bit more freedom, hopefully against Ukraine as well. And it's a funny one because in terms of how we cover it on Radio Bristol, of course, it's not local in the sense that it's not about Bristol, it's about the whole country, it's about the England football team. But we go big on it because it's what everyone is talking about. And, my attitude, our attitude on air is always, we will talk about the stuff that people will be talking about in the pub. And, you go into any pub in Bristol, they're talking about the football at the moment, and rightly so. And we're doing brilliantly. So we just try to reflect that in my studio, obviously not in it now, but I've put up the England flags on my back wall, all the England bunting. We're going big on it. I've played, yesterday, for example, I played Three Lions, It's Coming Home on several occasions during the show. And people, some of them might be fed up of it now, but I'll play it again tomorrow. I've played it every day we've had a game or every show, if it's a Friday before the game at the weekend. I've always finished the show with Three Lions, and I will continue to do so as long as we're in the tournament. And no, we're just getting massively carried away by it all, really. And tomorrow on the show, we are talking about the fact that Sainsbury's have said if we win the Euros completely, they will rename their shop at the Southgate Centre in Bath, the Gareth Southgate Sainsbury's, which, it's got to happen now. So
that's brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, we've been loving it, and I've been loving it, and I am feeling very optimistic. Although trying to now, temper my I don't want to get too... If we were to lose against Ukraine or even lose in the semis, if we lost in the final, I could take it. If we lost in the quarters, particularly, or the semis, that would be tough to take now. But, what a journey we've been on already.
Yeah, I'll definitely be making sure to look out for that Three Lions song tomorrow at the end of the show.
Yeah.
But how are you going to be planning to watch the game on Saturday then? You got anything planned or just go down the pub and watch it?
Well, I watched I've done different things for each game. I watched the Croatia game on my own at home because I like to pay attention to the game. I don't like being distracted too much. Then the England-Scotland game I was watching with mates, which is probably a good thing because then you can start chatting halfway through it because it was a terrible game.
Yeah, it wasn't the best.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Czech game I watched with mates, and then the Germany game I watched on my own, which I was pleased about actually because I was so nervous. I just wanted to focus. But Saturday I'm going around to my mum and dad's in Nailsea, and my uncle and aunts are coming over with my cousins, and we will all watch it together as a family, which will be special because that's the other nice thing about major tournaments is they bring people together. Yeah. And it's a chance it's that shared experience that is really special. So how have you been watching the games?
Well, the first one obviously watched when my dad Croatia game. Same with Scotland and what was the other one? Czech. Yeah, same with Czech as well. And then on the Germany game on Tuesday, I went around my mate's house to watch that one. And then I think for this one, I'm either going to be watching it with my dad again, or I think we might have some friends around again. Just put it on in the garden and then hopefully look for an England win.
And then the other thing is as well, people then develop all these superstitions about, I've got to watch it here or with this person. I used to have this thing with Liverpool. I used to have this thing that I never wanted my gran to come round when Liverpool were playing because every time she did, we never won. So I'd say to my parents, can we please, I love my gran, but can we not have her around today because Liverpool are playing and she's a bad omen? And people are a bit like that with England. People would be messaging us going, oh yeah, I'm going to listen to the game tonight because whenever I watch it on TV, we lose. But if I listen on the radio, we win. And there's this whole thing about when it's on the BBC, England have a better track record when the games are shown on the BBC than when it's ITV. I think the game against Colombia in the last World Cup that we won on penalties was the first ever knockout game we've ever won on ITV. So there's a bit of superstition around that as well.
I saw another exciting fact for an England fan. I think it was the last time England won their first four without conceding was 1966. So take of that what you will.
There we go. If you needed any more persuading, it's coming home. That's the one.
Yeah, definitely. And then one final question before I let you go. Then I think this is probably the most important of the one we've been talking about. James, is football coming home?
Football is 100% coming home.
That's what we love to hear.
I'm an optimist. I'm not a latecomer to this. I've been banging this drum from the start of the tournament. Okay, maybe I didn't fully believe before the group stage.
There you go.
But I thought it was a possibility because look, it's almost a home tournament for us. The game on Saturday in Rome is the only game we're not playing at Wembley if we make it all the way, and we've got a good team. And you look at the other teams left in the competition. Yeah, okay, there are some good sides: Italy, Belgium, Spain in particular. But there's no one we can't beat if we play to our best. And I've got England flags on my car. And you don't see that many at the moment. I'm not seeing too many people driving around with them on.
I saw one garage in Bristol, or it might be a car dealership, and it had England flags in every single car they were selling.
Really?
And I thought
Good
that,
for that.
yeah.
Well, there are places. I mean, talking of Knoll West, there's a street in Knoll West, Torrington Avenue, I think, that's got like England flags on every house. That's great, and I love all that. But you don't see many. But I put my England flags on early in the tournament. I'm starting to see a few more now, and I'm thinking, oh, you latecomers, you're all now you're believing. But no, I was quite optimistic quite early on, and I think because of the way we beat Germany, which was almost, we felt like Germany. That's how Germany play, efficient.
Yeah.
Finding a way of making what should be a really difficult match seem quite straightforward. It felt very un-England, which is probably a really big compliment to the side. So, it's coming home.
If you're Gareth Southgate then for the Ukraine game on Saturday, who are you starting and who are you leaving out?
Well, I'm going to a back four. I think the back five was brilliant for Germany, but they're a different threat. Ukraine. I think we've got to be more attacking. So back four. I'd be tempted to bring Henderson in for one of Rice or Phillips just because they're both on yellow cards. And also, you've got to use your squad. I mean, if we make it to the final, we will have had 4 games in about 13 days. So you've got to, give people a chance to have a bit of a rest when you can. So bring Henderson in. I would bring Mount back in probably for Saka, and then you're playing either Foden or Grealish. I think Sancho's been underused, but we've got a great squad and it's worked so far, so you can't complain, really.
Yeah, definitely. As you said, I think we've got to use the players we do have, but in my opinion, I think Grealish has got to start. He was brilliant on when he came on against Germany, and in the other games he came on in the group as well. I think he's definitely got to start, but as well as obviously Sancho, Foden, and Mount hopefully coming back into the squad. But yeah, should be a good day on Saturday.
Oh, I can't wait. I mean, my only concern with Grealish is he's worked so well as an impact sub.
Yeah,
why change it? If he's working as an impact sub, does he have the same impact if he starts? I don't know. And then the other thing is as well, he has this thing where he slows the pace of attack slightly. He likes to kind of check back, have a bit of time on the ball, and that's great because that's when he's thinking of what creative genius to deploy. Whereas I think Foden and Mount move the ball a bit more quickly, so you get that dynamism in attack. But what do I know?
What do any England fans are always going on and saying Southgate's wrong, isn't he? And then he goes out and gets a 2-0 win versus Germany.
Fair play to him because he gets paid the big bucks to make the big calls, and he would have been slaughtered had we lost that game because people thought it was quite a defensive lineup, but it was a tactical masterstroke, and he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and to be fair, he has shown that he's has known what he's doing this tournament, hasn't he?
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, thank you for joining me today, James. Absolute pleasure talking to you this afternoon.
No, thank you, Ben. It's been absolutely lovely.
Yeah, it has. And obviously, again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Come on, you Reds.